Welcome back, everybody. We're going to be talking about my personal study process today. You can learn a couple of tips. Maybe I'll mention some things that you haven't thought of before. And so I broke this video down into the tools and the process. The tools are going to be the objects or the software that I use. And then the process is basically a list of things that I have implemented that has just really made a big difference. So the first tool is a paper planner. And I've mentioned this before in some of the other videos, but I put all my assignments down as soon as the semester starts, and that way I can at any point see what's due at a certain week. I can see what work conflicts might come up just so I can know what my weeks are going to look like throughout the semester. So I put everything down in a paper planner. That really helps. The second tool I use is a digital calendar, and you can see on your screen the different events that I have throughout the week. Now, I use a calendar app called Fantastical, and whenever I first started using this calendar, it was kind of the only one that looked as good as it did and was as easy to use. But I think there's a lot of calendars out there now like this. But you can see that I have the different events repeating, and then I have color coded the different kinds of things that I have to do each week. So like for me, my job, I'm a youth pastor. I love working with teens and students and teaching them how to live for God. And whenever I create a repeating event, it may be something like sermon prep. Well, I don't have to be in person for sermon prep, but if I don't do that consistently throughout the week, I get behind. And nobody's standing over my shoulder making sure that I'm doing that. So the weekly digital calendar allows me to create repeating events, and it helps me turn things in on time. And then I've mentioned before that when you track your study time, if you update the digital calendar, you know better how to anticipate the amount of time you're supposed to spend on the different projects. So the third tool is Microsoft OneNote. Now, you can use a bunch of different note platforms. I really like Microsoft because it lets me put all the notes in one spot, and then I can perform a search over all the notebooks. So I graduated from Bible college, and I have notes on different books of the Bible, and then I also have notes on like Greek or church history, and I can search all those notes in one search bar. So I really like Microsoft's feature for that. And it's a cloud-based system. So if I lose the note, like you can't lose the cloud like you could a paper notebook. So that's really nice. It's helpful. The fourth tool that I use are Notecards. And a lot of people swear by Notecards, don't use anything else. And Notecards are really good because they help you use what's called active recall. A lot of people, when they study, they just go over their notes and they don't try to see what they can remember without being reminded of what the material was. And when you use active recall, that's where you are presented with a problem and you try to come up with a solution and you're not given the answers. It makes a huge difference whenever you're going on to a test, you're getting ready to go and take that test, whenever you've practiced remembering the answers without having the notes right in front of you. So it's a more active way of learning. And note cards, whenever you put something down on the note card, you have to choose to flip the note card to see what the information is. Your mind learns the best whenever you have to remember what the solution was to the problem. And then if you remember it, it solidifies in your brain. And if you forget it and you really you go through that confusing moment, that's when your brain learns the most, whenever you're then given the answer and then you flip the card. So the fifth tool is a monitor, and not just one monitor, but a second monitor. My wife got me a monitor for Christmas that's like a portable one that I can plug into my laptop, and it's made a huge difference. I wasn't sure how well I was going to like it, but I really, really like it. And in my office, I also have a second monitor, and it lets me have my calendar open, that digital calendar tracking my time open while working on a project. Or I can do sermon prep on one monitor and then on the bottom computer have another maybe book open or something that helps me use my time more efficiently. So I really like having a second monitor. It's made a huge difference having two screens. I feel like my speed has improved in the different areas. So the sixth tool is logos or accordance. And people pronounce this logos or logos. It's based on the Greek word for literally word. And logos has a great platform for preparing sermons and then keeping tabs on what you're preaching throughout the year. So being a Bible student and working in a church, that's been really helpful. And Accordance, similar to Logos, they're competitive Bible software programs. You can buy books on both of them, but Logos is a little more user-friendly, and then Accordance is actually really good with the languages. You can hover over a Greek and Hebrew word, and it's a little simpler how it's presented in like the bottom box in the platform. You can do the same feature on Logos, but Accordance for me is a little bit better with the languages, and the diagramming feature is nice too. So now the process begins with daily fitness. That's the first part of the process. As far as being a student, being involved in exercise weekly made a huge difference for my brain. And a lot of people don't really realize that your brain is a muscle just like the rest of your body. And when your body's not healthy, it affects your brain, and vice versa. When your brain's not healthy, it affects your body. So making sure that you have some kind of a fitness involved in your weekly regimen as a student is going to make a huge difference. And the second part of the process is having a study system. My study system has evolved over time, and then the different tests, some are harder than others and require more time, but I try to do 2 weeks and 20 minutes for a test 2 weeks out. So I try to not have to study on the weekends. So far, I haven't been super successful. I've usually had to wrap things up on the weekends, but my idea is that if Monday through Friday I can study 20 minutes for a test and do that for 2 weeks in a row, then I'll be ready for the test. And usually that works. It just depends on what the test is over and how difficult it is. But the point is, the process of having a study system has made a huge difference in my life, and it's made me not worry about, am I going to be ready for this test in 3 days? I'm just like, I'm following my system, and then if the test doesn't go good, I'll adjust the system, but I don't really have to worry about it. So the second part of the process is having a study system. And the third part of the process is active recall. Now, I mentioned with the note cards that active recall is really helpful because you look and you see one side of you see the question, and then you're trying to remember the answer. Brain is at its best performance when it has to remember. And so active recall I try to use in as many systems as I can. But one thing that I do is when I have OneNote open, I'll have like a notes section on one side, and that's what I just write down when the class is going. And after the class is done, I'll go back and then I'll write questions on all the notes. And with OneNote, you can zoom in and zoom out. So I'll do notes, questions, and then I'll answer the questions in the third column over. I got this idea from what's called the Cornell note-taking system. It's where you take notes on like 2/3 of the page on the left, and then on the other third, you write out questions, and in the bottom, you summarize. And instead of summarizing at the bottom, I just write the questions on the right. So whenever I'm studying, I can do active recall over any part of notes, any part of my notes. So active recall, make sure that you use that when you're studying. It'll save you a bunch of time. That's the third step in my process. The fourth step is a weekly accountability meeting. I have not always had this, but I've been, about a little under a year having people that I talk to every week about what I'm going to try to do or accomplish. And that's made a big difference because I can see areas that I need to improve in, and then maybe not have the solution, but have people that I can say, you know what, I'm going to find the solution. And my wife and I will do this too. If we have to get something done, we'll say, hey, I need to get this done by this date. Just telling you for accountability, because when you add people and you add accountability, it makes literally everything better. It works in church. That's God's plan for the church, is to have accountability. It works professionally when people are meeting weekly to go over what has been accomplished the past week. So that weekly accountability meeting has been really, really helpful. So if you can get some friends to do that with you, and you can tell them, this would be a good place to practice that artificial deadline. We talked about that in some of the study videos, but you can tell your friends, I want this project done a week in advance, and then they can hold you accountable. Step 5 is a monthly review. And this step I've done on and off for the last few years. I've done it very consistently the last 4 or 5 months. And that's actually part of the reason why I've kind of got the YouTube channel going, because I was looking at the different areas of my life, and I was strong in some, but not strong in others. And I was thinking about what are some solutions to becoming strong in these areas. And one of the solutions was, what if I started a YouTube channel? So it's actually kind of cool how that worked out. But a monthly review is where you take the different categories of your life and you rate them out of 10 every month. And at the end of your evaluation, what you do is you say, okay, here's where I'm at on these different areas, and pick 2 or 3 areas that you're going to work on. But don't just say, I'm going to work on this area. Say, I'm going to do this to work on this area. For example, if you're having a hard time getting the studying done that you need to, you can say, I'm going to implement a study system for the next test, right? Be specific, and that'll help make sure that you get accomplished what you're trying to. And then you just evaluate, okay, was that a good way to try to work on this area better, it was a bad way. If you're struggling in your spiritual life, I'm going to get on a Bible reading plan. If you're struggling with your fitness, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times this week, starting this day at this time. And here's the time I'm going to go every single week. So rate all those areas. For mine, I have health, spiritual life, marriage, finances, learning, growth. And then probably 3 months ago, I added like 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goals. And I can just look at those goals at the end of every month and say, okay, am I liking this? Am I not liking this? And the reason that the month review has stuck for me in the last, I'd say I've been doing it really consistent for 5 months. So I haven't been doing it forever, but I've had the sheet to review my months. I've had that for like 3 years, but I didn't do it consistently. The thing that pushed me over the edge to do it consistently the last 5 months was putting it in the calendar. So back to the whole digital calendar, I'm a huge fan, but you pick those different areas, you rate them out of 10, and then at the bottom, you say, I'm gonna work on this area by doing this, and it just helps you be more balanced. So do that. That's the 5th step. The 6th step of the process is Spotify. When you study, it's really helpful to have background noise so that you don't get distracted. I'm not talking about having songs playing in the background, because whenever you have lyrics, it should make it a little bit more difficult to remember the information. Some people say it doesn't, but for me personally, I don't see how I could have a song playing and then not be and then be just as focused on the material. So I use Spotify, I listen to lo-fi playlists, and I just play it in the background. That way, when I'm studying, and then where I live, there's a train that goes by, I don't get distracted by the train, and I don't get distracted by the people who honk on the road, because I have a background playlist playing. And lo-fi was really cool. I don't know how long that's been out, but I really enjoy listening to that because it helps me be not distracted. And then I have the noise canceling headphones in, and it's great. So that's the 6th part of the process, is Spotify. And the 7th part is rotate your locations of studying. I get kind of bored when I go to the same place and do the same thing every single day. Now, there's elements of that are really helpful, like going to the gym. You want to do that really consistently. But in anything, you want to mix it up. So don't study in the same place every single week or every single day. Mix it up. Or maybe you do it for 1 week here, and then the next week you go to this coffee shop. Just make sure you mix it up, and it'll keep it fresh and when you're changing up the environment. Step 8, do the hardest things of your day first. Whenever I have like 3 or 4 things to do in the day, there's this principle, I don't remember where it comes from, a bunch of people say it, but it's basically swallow the frog. Do the hardest thing first, because when you're at the most willpower of your day, which is usually the morning for a lot of people, do the hardest thing, because it'll be the easiest at that time versus doing something that's very difficult right after lunch when you're kind of drowsy. So do the hardest things first in your day. And for me, that means reading. Do reading that I have to do first thing in the morning, because at 8 o'clock, I'm so much more likely to sit down and read than I am at 3. So do the hardest things in your day first. And the 9th step to the process is experiment. I kind of touched on this when I talked about studying in different locations, but try studying with people, try studying in different intervals, try, like I said, planning a new spot to go. All these different things, guys, if you'll mix it up, it'll make it much more enjoyable. And by experimenting, you'll become more and more efficient, and it won't become as dry as quickly. So use those different tools and learn from the process. This is just what I'm doing now. I'm kind of excited to look back in a couple years and see if I'm still doing the same things, but maybe you've learned a couple of things. I hope it's been helpful. If there's anything else that you have questions about, or maybe I could do a video on just one of these topics, throw in the comments, let me know, and we'll see y'all later.